So lifestyle creep keeps a lot of people in a chokehold. And if you watch finance related videos, this is a term that I know you're probably familiar with. So it basically involves upgrading your lifestyle unnecessarily every time your income increases. So you might drive a car that's in good condition or live in a house that's perfectly suitable for your family. But as soon as you get a pay increase, you're automatically bumping it up to the next level. And not because you have to, but just because you can. Now I have to say, as our income increases, some lifestyle creep is to be expected, because there's likely things that you would like to do now, but you can't because you don't have enough cash. So once you're able to have a little extra change in your pocket, there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself. But how do you know that it's really okay to bump up your lifestyle once your income increases? That is the question we're going to answer. I feel that there are times when it is okay, but there are also times when you should keep things the same. So here are 2 guidelines that I think will help anyone in this situation. So the first thing you want to do is look at your current net pay. Now, not your gross income, but your take-home pay, or basically what you bring home after taxes and payroll deductions. And you want this number to be as accurate as possible. So you're gonna go and grab your most recent pay stubs, look at your bank statements, any other documents that you need to get a clear idea of exactly how much your net pay is. And to drive home what I'm trying to say, we're gonna use some hypothetical numbers here. So let's say after you do your calculations, you figure out that your net pay is $50,000 a year, or approximately $4,200 a month. Now that the first part is done and you know what your net pay is, the next thing you have to do is consider how well have you been living on that money. So in this scenario, it's $4,200 a month. So you have to ask yourself, has that amount been enough to cover your basic expenses, and has it been enough to allow you to hit some of your financial goals, maybe paying off debt or building an emergency fund? And in all honesty, once you start looking at that monthly figure, one of 3 things is going to be true. Number 1, either it hasn't been enough, meaning that you're in the hole every single month and you might be using credit as an extension of your income. Number 2, it might just be enough, meaning that you have cash to pay your basic living expenses, but you're living paycheck to paycheck because there's nothing left over. Or number 3, it is enough and you have more than enough cash available. So now that you know exactly where you stand, this is how you're going to decide if you can afford to upgrade your lifestyle after your pay increases. So remember, before, your net pay or your take-home pay was $50,000 a year, okay? So now you're making $60K a year, meaning that you have an extra $10,000 in your bank account. And if you were previously living paycheck to paycheck, that extra money is a godsend. And this is basically where I feel a lot of people mess up once they get a pay increase. So looking at the scenario, you went from $50,000 to $60,000. Now, thinking about your old net pay, if that $50,000 that you were earning was not enough to cover your basic expenses, or maybe it was just enough, now that you're making an extra $10,000 a year, don't upgrade your lifestyle. I recommend keeping everything the same, or as much as the same as possible, because now that you have an extra $10,000 on your check every single year, or an extra $833 a month, that means that you are no longer living paycheck to paycheck if you keep everything the same. For the first time in probably a long time, you now have some wiggle room in your budget where now you can start focusing on some of your financial goals. But that is not going to happen if you immediately bump up your lifestyle and you start living on that $60K take-home pay. So at this point, in all honesty, the last thing you want to be thinking about is upgrading your lifestyle, because if you move into a house that's slightly nicer than what you currently have, or drive a car that's slightly nicer, you're going to quickly run through that extra $833 a month. And when you do that, you're going to end up right back in the same place complaining about living paycheck to paycheck. So what you want to do instead is pretend that that pay raise did not happen. And I realize that that would be very, very hard for some people to do, but I promise you, it will be one of the best financial decisions you can make for yourself, and it is something that you will not regret. But then again, you might be the third option. So before your pay increase, maybe you had a lot of disposable income. Maybe you had a net pay of $50,000 a year, but you were only spending about 30 or 40,000 of that. And if so, then yeah, that changes things a bit, because in that situation, you can afford to upgrade your lifestyle without it causing any type of financial harm. If you were taking home $50,000 a year, but you were only spending 40, and now your take home is 60,000, then yeah, realistically, you probably can afford to bump up your lifestyle by 10 grand a year and be perfectly okay. And that's because you were already living beneath your means in the first place. And bumping up things a little bit isn't going to change that. So the bottom line is that if you were struggling and you get a slight increase in pay, do everything within your power to keep your spending at the exact same level. That way you can actually benefit from earning more money. But on the other hand, if the disposable income was already flowing and getting a pay increase further widens that gap between your income and your expenses, increasing your lifestyle a little isn't going to be the end of the world. But even so, to play it safe, don't bump up everything. Maybe choose one or two areas to gradually increase your spending.